Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Guided Path webinar. We're so excited. This is one of the topic that many people are interested in. Our guest for today is Susan Knoppow with the topic, Enough is Enough, Letting Go of the Imperfect Essay. We will be starting in just about a minute. That gives time for people to join our webinar and get situated. As you're waiting for the webinar to start, please locate your question section. This is how we interact with you on our webinars. So find that and send us a little note, a message to let us know that you found it. So thank you everyone for being with us today. My name is Cindy McDonald. I am your hostess for this webinar, and we will be starting in just a moment. Well, good morning. Thank you everyone for being with us today. We're so glad to have you, and we're very excited to be offering this webinar for you. My name is Cindy McDonald. I'm with Guided Path. I'm also a counselor. I've been working with students at the high school, middle school level, and as an independent counselor for over 20 years. And this is a topic today that I know is very close to our hearts as counselors and working with our students is, when is enough enough? When do we let go of the imperfect essay? And with us today is Susan Knoppow, and she is going to share with you her knowledge and expertise. She is the CEO of the WOW Writing Workshop, and we're so glad to have you with us today, Susan, and thank you for sharing your time. Before I turn over to you, I want to make one other comment. Please, as you're joining us in this webinar, please find your question box. Some of you have already found it. Thank you. That's great. And find your question box and put in a comment. That way you know where it is. As we go through, we're going to gather questions because I know Susan's topic is going to generate a lot of questions. And we will save time at the end of the webinar for the questions. So Susan, with that, I'm so pleased to turn this time over to you and let you share with us some of your thoughts and how do we know when enough is enough, and how do we know when to let go of the perfect essay?
Thank you, Cindy. It's really my pleasure to be here with you today, and to everyone who's listening. I just want to let you know that I will answer as many questions as I possibly can today. Hopefully my presentation will answer most of your questions, and you can always find us online as well and through Guided Path. As Cindy said, I'm the CEO of WOW Writing Workshop. We have been around for about 6 years, but my business partner and I have been helping students with application essays informally for many more years than that. I have been teaching writing for more than 20 years, both in classrooms and independently, and Kim and I are also professional writers. We have both worked with large corporations, with nonprofits, with small businesses for close to 30 years. What makes us unique as WOW Writing Workshop, and is really the basis for today's session, is our perspective and experience as both writers and teachers. It's sort of an unusual combination in this business, as you might have found. We know how the writing process works from the inside out, and we've made a business of sharing that process and insight with students and with the professionals who support them. So we write and we teach writing. And the college essay is one of our specialties. So in that realm, we wanted to let you know that we offer 2 different types of services, and that's where my examples will come from today. We work with students directly. We work with students all over the country and all over the world. We have a patent-pending 10-step method, which we have developed and perfected over many years with thousands of students. But really what will be more interesting to you today is we work with professionals. Both professionals who use our method, because there are some, and those who have their own process, which is the majority of the clients we work with. So those who have their own process for essay coaching but want to improve their skills, they want to save time, And ultimately, they want to get better essays from their students so their students can stand out and be better positioned to get into the schools that they belong at. So today, just to let you know, today's webinar was originally developed for that second group, for the professionals who have their own process. We developed it last summer. It was part of our College Essay Institute group coaching series. So the webinar I'm doing today, other people signed up for and paid for last summer. We have 7 more like this one on a variety of topics. And the link you see at the bottom of the page, whilewritingworkshop.com guided path, will take you to resources and more information about our other services. The resources page includes worksheets that are meant to complement today's webinar. I'm going to talk in general terms, but in an hour I can't tell you exactly how to do all of these things. The resources will get you closer to how to do these things, how to make important changes. You won't become an expert overnight, but I hope I can do my part to help you support your students. Now, while we say that there are 3 phases that a college essay goes through, most people are used to structure. Students are accustomed to structure. What should it look like? Show me a successful essay. What we say is step back and start with content. So as a reviewer, you need to know which phase you are in. The content phase is, what am I trying to convey? What's the story I want to tell? The structure phase is, what does the package look like? How do I move through this essay? And finally, polish. How can I perfect it? Often what happens is we're trying to review an essay in all 3 phases all at the same time, and it becomes a mess. It's time-consuming, it's confusing, it's overwhelming to the students. For this reason, and this is a topic for another day, but I just wanted to share this with you, we don't share sample essays. We don't show students the perfect final drafts of other students because we firmly believe that the correct essay will evolve through the process of writing it. As a writing teacher, I cannot emphasize that enough. We want to see what the final product looks like. That's our inclination as human beings. We want to know what we're trying to make. And I would advise you, if you can bear it, to try to get out of that mindset and get more into the mindset of a writer and think process. So I am going to talk a lot about the polish phase because I think that's where we try to figure out where to stop. But I'll also mention content and structure because often what has happened is we get to a point where we say the student has written so many drafts or she's running out of time. But the mistakes we see are really content and structure errors that are showing up late in the process that often could have been taken care of earlier. So while you may not be able to fix it for that particular essay, look at your most challenging essays and your most challenging students as an opportunity to learn something about what you might be able to do next time. Because often the problems do start earlier, and the reason that you aren't always sure when to let go is because there are deeper issues behind the problematic essay. So I'd like to start in a place where I start all of my webinars and all of my consulting with any professional, and that's setting expectations. Everyone who has a stake in the final essay has expectations. We're not even going to get into the college, what their expectations are. You have expectations. The student has expectations, and the parent has expectations. Not to mention all the other outside forces who may be weighing in at various times. You really need to be checking in and aligning those expectations frequently. When generating ideas, what makes a good idea, you need to make sure everyone understands that. You don't want a parent coming in at the very end and saying, "Ugh, I can't believe you let him write about that." The parent needs to understand up front what the student is doing and why. You need to make sure the student understands what you will and will not be doing in your capacity as a coach or a reviewer. We see student essays at various stages. We have some students that we work with from the very beginning, and we're very clear about everything that we're going to do. We have other students who send us what they consider completed essays, and they would like us to give it our seal of approval and wave them on their way and tell them that it is the most brilliant work we've ever seen. For those students, we really have to be careful about setting expectations, because often what they send us is not so perfect. And again, there are issues that could have been resolved much earlier in the process. We hate telling a student who's clearly worked very hard, written many, many drafts, that they missed the point of the essay altogether. So we have to be clear. While you're reviewing, when the essay is done, you need to set expectations. So think about yourself. Here's something that you really have control over. Think about what your real goal is and be very honest with yourself. Are you too invested in the beautiful essay? Do you have a vision of where that essay is going? Be careful, because sometimes your vision and either the student's vision or the student's capabilities or willingness don't match up, and you need to be realistic. With parents, you need to make sure that they understand what schools are looking for. I am sure that you've had the experience of a parent being upset. If the student is not a stellar writer, this is not the time to change it. Admissions officers tell us all the time, and we have conversations with them all the time. They are looking for the voice of a 17-year-old student. Some of those students are exceptional communicators, and some of them are not. And this is not the time to change that. You are not going to transform them into magnificent communicators if they're not. What you can do is help them find great topics, help them move through the process confidently, and feel very happy with what they've ended up with. So that takes me to one very important concept. We do not use the word edit. And I would advise you to try to remove it from your vocabulary. Editing suggests fixing. Editing suggests, I will finish it off for you. I will help you make sure that it's perfect. Reviewing is, I have expertise. I'm a counselor. I am here to support you. I'm here to show you what I know and help you reach that goal. But I'm not going to fix the essay. The student needs to do the work. Your job is to help the student get to that next place to improve the essay. So here's advice that we've been giving for years, and I was really thrilled. I've been hearing this over and over, and I don't know if it came from us or it's just been in the air, but to hear others sharing this message as well. How do you review? How do we review? First, just read it. If you need to print it in order to not touch your computer keyboard, then do it. If you can read it on a screen without typing and making notes, great. But first, just read it. Read it like the audience would read it. Read it like an admissions officer would read it. Put away your pen. Sit somewhere comfortable. Just read it. And then read it again. And if this is an essay that you've been working on with a student through other drafts, look at the prior drafts. Look at how the essay has evolved. Note what they have done. Second, make some notes. But again, don't write on the essay. Think about, what are you looking for in this review? Are we almost done? Is it time to just do a final proofread? What works? What doesn't work? How should the student approach the change? And when you get to how the student should approach the change, you need to give simple instructions. Those are the examples I'm going to give today. Keep it simple. I'll give you a story from my own experience. When I first started doing this work, more than just casually with friends and neighbors, I was so excited because I could see everything that needed to be fixed in an essay. I'm thinking, I'm a writing teacher. I recognize this. I know everything that needs to be done to this essay, from content to structure to polish. I knew. And so I would write my students these long letters. I would spend an hour just writing the letter. These custom, perfect examples of everything they needed to do. Give them details and details and details. Because I was the expert. Because I knew things. I saw things that they couldn't see. And I'd get the next draft and they would have done maybe one of the things I recommended. Usually it was the first thing I recommended. But they didn't do all the things I recommended, and I thought, well, why aren't they paying attention to my exquisite instructions? And I realized that I was overwhelming them. It was too much. So I had to learn, and then I had to teach our writing coaches, and I've shared this now with other consultants and counselors, what to look at when, what to look for, and what to comment on. So think about when you're giving the comments what you liked. Where did you smile? What do you remember? Tell the student. Think about how much better the essay could be after 4 years of college. And then put it away. Because what you're looking for is not how excellent it could be in 4 more years. It's how much better could it be tomorrow, given that the student has soccer practice and babysitting and physics homework. Be realistic. Give small suggestions as you go along, and you will find that you'll have better success. So what are some of the challenges? Well, one, we call them missed opportunities. I see so much potential. I can't believe what the student hasn't accomplished. Procrastination. We all know students who are procrastinators. There's grammar and spelling problems. There's students for whom English is not their first language. There are students who repeat themselves, who feel that they must use all 650 words worth of space and don't have 650 words worth of material. There are parents who present challenges. There are English teachers who present challenges. We're going to look at each of these one by one. In every case, it's very important to help the student see the work from a new perspective with each review. Again, you're not the fixer. You're not the editor. You are the mirror. You're the one who's helping them to reflect, and that's most important. Until the very, very, very end, the final review, the absolute last draft, there really should be no line editing. There should be no, I wish you'd use this word instead of that word. That's up to the student. That kind of editing really doesn't belong, and if it does, it belongs way at the end, when the student has made the most important choices. Because you have to think about the message you're sending when you do that kind of editing. You're saying, I'm the expert, I know best, and for those of you who find that your students rely on you and won't even tie their shoes without your approval, won't make a single change in their essay without your approval, you don't want to encourage that kind of dependence. You want to encourage independence. Make notes of other things that you've noticed, but don't share them all with the student all at once. So let's talk about missed opportunities. These are the things that disappoint us the most, right? We say, I saw such potential. He could have done this. She should have done that. When you feel yourself saying those things, when you hear those thoughts in your head, when you sit down to dinner with your family and you say, there was such an opportunity, this girl, she just won't work hard enough, she had a great idea and she didn't express herself as clearly as I would have liked. Think about, whose essay is this? And I talked a little bit about your expectations. You may have a vision for where the essay can go. The student, for many, many reasons, may not go there. Some of them will, some of them won't. Students will make choices. You might not agree with all of them. Now, I'm not talking about laziness. I'm not talking about students who just, who say, well, you didn't tell me to, so I'm not going to. That's a different issue. Here's our rule. Make a suggestion once. Make the suggestion twice. And then let it go. We just had this the other day. My partner Kim and I were talking about a student who she seemed to have it all together. She had a great idea, and she kind of went halfway with it. Kim gave her some interim writing exercises. She asked her more questions. She really tried to help the girl focus, and she just wouldn't do it. So Kim went back to her and said, I asked you to do this and simple stuff. Still didn't do it. So she took a deep breath and she said, well then, okay, that's okay. I'm going to move on to the next phase. I'm going to assume that that's as far as the student is either willing or able to go. I gave it my best shot. I'm not going to bother her about it, because all that does is tells the student that you don't respect their choices. Even if the choices are passive choices, even if the student didn't go as far as he could go, that's a choice. Now remember, every essay you work on, especially if you are working independently with students and you see many, many essays, every essay you work on with a student is providing a foundation for the next essay. So however you interact with them on the first one, on the second one, is going to set the stage for your entire writing coaching relationship. Sometimes you have to let things go in earlier essays. Remember, they haven't sent in the applications yet. They will sometimes come back and recognize ideas that you planted. You talk about them in a third essay, and they go back to the first essay and say, oh, now I understand why you asked me to do this. It does happen. So let's talk more about could have, would have, wish they had. Often that comes down to procrastination. Is a student just lazy? Well, you didn't raise this child, so you may not be able to fix that. Is the student too busy? If that's the case, you really have to work within the amount of time you have. And that can be a hard one to say, well, this should be your priority. Again, you go down to expectations, student choices. The student is going to choose how to spend his or her time. The parent is going to have a lot to say about that. You can make recommendations. You can't force it. Often you can see an essay comes back after a review, and it looks a lot like it did the first time. That means they didn't spend enough time on it, unless you really didn't give them very many tips and didn't give very many suggestions. The other question is there an underlying issue? Is there more going on here? Is it maybe not procrastination? Are you asking for things the student isn't capable of? Is the student understanding your instructions? These are other issues that you can't really deal with in reviews, but if you see procrastination, it's really important to follow up with the parents. Now, this may sound like basic stuff, but again, you're setting parent expectations. If you go to a parent early on and say, your daughter has been missing a lot of her deadlines, or her reviews don't really reflect the kind of work that I expected, is she too busy? When the student finishes the essay, that parent is not going to say to you, probably won't, I don't understand why this essay isn't more exceptional. Because you've said, I've given her things to do and she hasn't done them. I have asked her to meet deadlines and she hasn't met them. We're running out of time and we need to wrap it up. That part is all about communication. And you can sit a student down and say, what kind of time do you have? Let's be realistic about your deadlines. Let's be clear about our expectations together. The other thing is, especially if you've been working with students for a long time, if you're a school counselor and you know the student, or you're an independent counselor and you've been working with the student for some time, you pretty much know if this is a procrastinator. That should never come as a surprise in the essay process, unless the essay is the first thing you've ever done with this student. You can use calendars with these students. We've had great luck with making sure that our reviews include time requirements, and it goes a long way toward that good communication. Grammar and spelling. This is something people ask us about a lot, and I say, wow, I don't think you need a writing teacher for proofreading. But what you do need a writing teacher for, and what you do need an expert like all of you for, is how to comment on grammar and spelling. Again, this is an opportunity to help the student reflect. I am not suggesting that you allow them to send in essays with glaring typos and spelling mistakes. But we often find that students are much more capable of making these changes and finding their own mistakes than they would have us believe. So what we'll do is when we get to the end, this is after the content is solid, the structure is perfect or as close to perfect as possible, and we're really doing the final review, many of the grammar and spelling errors take care of themselves. I highly recommend that you do not mark them up in early drafts. And I tell my students, I am not going to proofread your early drafts because I don't know if that word is going to make it into the later draft, and I don't want to distract you by that. Now, I might say to the student, you have a lot of run-ons, and in your next draft, I'd like you to try to take care of that. That could be a content or structure comment. But let's say you get to that really late draft. You're in the polish phase. It's time to look at grammar and spelling. I will mark one or two examples of problems that show up frequently. I may show them one run-on and say, this is a run-on sentence. Here are two different options for correcting it. Often it's a problem with they need to know where to use commas and or semicolons. They don't understand that they've even created a run-on sentence. And I will give them a very specific assignment, and I want it back that afternoon, or I want it back the very next morning. I want you to mark the run-ons and send it back to me. And then the student sends it back. Usually, they can find them. Generally, they miss a few. They're not going to be perfect. And I'll mark up a couple more after that. But what I'm asking the student to do is take responsibility. Again, I'm being a reviewer. I'm acting as a mirror. I'm providing guidance. I am not being an editor. That's not really our job, and it's not your job. So that's for run-ons. For spelling, I will mark misspelled words. My assumption is that if the student is a poor speller, that he or she has tools to deal with that kind of issue. And I need to ask the student, how do you usually deal with spelling? And if they don't have tools, then it may be time to encourage them to develop some. They're going off to college. They cannot rely on others to take care of all of their spelling mistakes. If diction is an issue, and by that I mean word choice, if it's consistent, leave it alone. If it doesn't sound sophisticated, okay. If it sounds like the student, that's good. If the student is trying too hard, if they think that a high level of diction is much better than a more average speaking kind of voice, you can suggest toning it down. You can mark some of the words that seem a little too fancy for the situation, and you can tell them that sometimes a high level of diction can actually be distracting. What I'll do there in a review is I will say, take this paragraph out of the essay completely. I'll tell them we're not revising the essay. I don't want them to think that I'm going to ask them to write in a more average speaking voice, although later I may. And I'll say, write this sentence as though you were just telling me this story. Write this paragraph as though you were just telling me this story. And they'll write it, and often it's beautiful. It's clear, it's focused. They're not trying to sound smart. They sound like themselves. And I'll show them that, and I'll show them the comparison and say, this paragraph right here, much stronger, much clearer. I can hear your voice. And admissions officers want to hear your voice. So I really suggest you do more of that. Some will go with it and some won't. But again, it's about choices. It's about being a reviewer and recommending that they really sound more like themselves. Another issue is adverbs. Really vary, although, ly words. Overall, we suggest take them out. Now again, I don't look for all of them. I will tell the student, you use these words a lot. You use these types of words a lot. I'd like you to find them. And I'd like you to send me a draft with all of them gone. So really all I'm doing is saying delete those words. And then I say, I will tell you if there's anywhere where I think they need to be put back. So again, I'm giving them tools. I'm giving them an exercise to do. Simple. It took me 5 minutes to notice that they had to do this. It took them 15 minutes to actually do it. It's one small thing. It's one really small thing that can make a difference. English as a second language. This is a little bit more of a challenge. And again, this goes to expectations. What if English is not the student's native language? What if you're working with students who are coming here from other countries or who are Americans whose second language is English, who may not have the strongest writing skills? What if their writing skills don't match their speaking skills? Here's what I want you to remember and what I want you to tell the students and tell the parents. Admissions officers know that English is not their first language. And if the essay doesn't match the TOEFL, you've probably heard this before, that's a red flag. So no one is doing these students any great service by trying to, again, fix the essay and make it sound more like a native speaker. These are not native speakers. I've worked with kids from many countries in Europe. I've worked with kids from China. What I will do with them is I will show them where I'll say, your verb tenses are not consistent. Do you know what I mean? You're speaking in past tense and present tense. This is an issue that comes up with native English speakers as well. And I will say to them, same thing, go back into your essay. I want you to circle all the verbs. And we've decided you're going to use past tense. So we've already had this conversation. I want you to mark all the verbs. And the ones that are not currently in past tense, I want you to put them in past tense. As I've said before, I'm giving them a very, very specific task. I'm teaching them to do something that will serve them well going forward. I am not going to be the editor. I'm not going to change all the verbs. There's a chance that they might miss one. It is possible. It's not the kiss of death. It's not going to keep them out of college. And frankly, if they're applying to schools that require a higher level of writing skill, even if they're brilliantly smart, they might not get into those schools. Or those schools might say, this is not a native English speaker, and he's brilliant. We want him anyway. I warn my students and my colleagues against trying to make the student sound like someone that he or she is not. Again, this goes way back to expectations, helping the student understand. This is not the time to change the student's voice. This is not the time to say, I know you could sound like this. Maybe in 3 or 4 years the student will, but right now she doesn't. What do you do with repetition? Now, what happens when the student tells you over and over in the essay, I was brave, I was strong, I was confident, or wants to describe a scene over and over and gets so much into what happened and getting you into the story that we don't really know why they're telling the story and why they're sharing this example. In this case, I really try to get our students to highlight the duplications. If possible, I have the student do it either alone or with me. Here are 6 times when you mention how frightened you were. Pick one. And this is always the question back. Which one should I pick? And I say, pick whichever one you want. Well, how do I know which one to pick? And I say, I trust your choice. If you revise the essay and it's clear that you picked the wrong one, I will be the first one to tell you. And I can tell you on this webinar today that 99% of the time I am completely thrilled with their choice. The only time I think I haven't been was when maybe one of the repetitions was a little more clear and provided details that were necessary for another part of the essay. But in general, the students know what to pick. And frankly, if they mention the same thing 3 or 4 times, it really doesn't matter which one they pick. They just need one. And they need to recognize that they have been repetitive. If a student can't or won't make these kinds of changes or says, I don't know what to do, or they're completely stuck, you have a choice. You can help and do it with them, or you can leave it alone. Because again, you have to use your good judgment. Is a student refusing to do this on his or her own because they can't, because they won't, because they're stubborn? You know your students. Use your judgment. Again, just like many other things, we recommend it once. We recommend it twice. If they won't do it, then we step back and say, my ego's too tied up in this. Not my essay, not my college application. I need to be professional, I need to be the adult, and I need to step away and let the student make his or her choices. Another way to help students with repetition, if they don't recognize it themselves, is to have them read the essay aloud. They all have phones. You can ask them to read it to themselves and record it and listen back. You can also read it to them. Maybe they can't see it on the page or they're so familiar with it, they can't even recognize where they're being repetitive. But this is an important place, again, to help the student own the essay, to help the student recognize the strengths in the essay and the places where they overdo it. I want to talk a little bit also, before I get into other readers, because that's really our next section, word count. Some students, now, this isn't a huge problem. It depends where you are in the process. This is not so much a late in the essay problem. This often happens with us earlier in the essay in the content and structure phases. Word count. How do I get it down to, I can't get it down to this many words. I have so much to say. I have 800 words here and I don't know what to cut. I will tell the student, I want you to try first. The message to them, again, is I want you to take a crack at getting it down to the number of words. Nothing is lost. If you cut something important, I promise I'll let you know. We advise our students actually during the revision process to open a new document, to start typing from scratch. Not that they cannot copy word for word many of the sentences and paragraphs they already have. I'm not saying just sit down with a blank mind and a blank paper and start again. I'm saying look at what you have. Make some choices. Make some choices you don't like and then go back and make different choices. But I trust your choices, and I have all your drafts. So don't save it again with the same name. Give it a new name so that you can go back and look at what you had and determine if you've gotten rid of something important. But there will be a point in the review process with my students where I will tell them, I want you to take a crack at getting it close to the word count. If they send it back and say I can't, then I tell them again, I say again, go back. If you have to just cut a paragraph, if that's the best you can do, cut a paragraph. If you can cut a sentence here and there, go ahead. But I really want them to try first because, I don't want to send the message that I'm the editor. I'm not the fixer. I'm not the editor. I'm the reviewer. And as a reviewer, it's my job to step back and say, there was a great scene in your earlier draft. I think we need to put it back. Let me help you find a place for it, and let me help you find something else that you might want to cut in order to make space. But I won't do what you would commonly consider an editing markup, where I have arrows and move this paragraph here and cross out this word and change this word and move this sentence. We're not editors on a newspaper. That's not our job. We are not working with professionals who have hired us to help them write the copy for their speeches. These are students. These are kids. Every word needs to belong to the student. So before we take questions and finish up, I want to talk a little bit about parents and English teachers. I talked before about discussing expectations, making sure that students are in charge, but we all know that parents are the ones who make a lot of the decisions, and we must be respectful. I'm a parent. I have a student who's even applying to college this year, so I see all of this from a completely different perspective as well. These are the words I use with my students. These are the words that all of our coaches use with their students. We encourage them to share their essays with parents and other adults when they are ready to, and these are our words, respectfully decline anything that is not helpful and graciously accept that which is helpful. So what do I mean by that? I say to my students, if you can look your dad in the eye and say, thanks, Dad, that's really helpful. I'm going to consider that. Or you can say, thanks, Dad, but that's not really what I was trying to accomplish with the essay. I'm going to keep it the way I have it. Then they're ready to share with their parents and other adults. If they can't do that, you can warn them that they might have some trouble in that discussion, because you want to assume that they've made good choices all along the way. If someone swoops in and negates all of the work you've done together, and I know every one of us has been there, it makes a student feel terrible. It makes a student doubt their interaction with you. It makes a student doubt himself or herself, and it doesn't set you up to do anything better with the next essay. It really destroys the foundation. So it's important to communicate with parents as much as possible about why the essay is done, why the essay fits in with the full application package. How does it fit? Why is this essay really ready? Why, for example, we've had parents who will say, but I want my son to talk about his fencing trophies. It's so important. And I'll say, the school knows that he's a top fencer in your state. And he's going to talk in one of his essays, his other essays, about his favorite activity. And that's fencing. This essay is about who he is, what kind of person he is. He doesn't have to talk about that here, and he's done a beautiful job. Sometimes we have to help the students and the parents really understand what this essay is and what it is not. Putting that in writing can be very helpful as well. So what do we do with English teachers? Well, the fact is that English teachers can be a great help and can be a great challenge. We talk to a lot of English teachers, and we talk to a lot of counselors who have to deal with English teachers. Again, you have to prepare the student. If a student has to turn in an essay as part of their 12th grade English class, you need to prepare them. Your teacher may or may not agree that this is an A+ paper. Your teacher may have different ideas, but your teacher is not the audience. The teacher does not know very much about the audience. Remind the student that you are an expert on the audience. You know about admissions officers. You know about the people who will be reading these essays. We often have this problem early in the season, actually, when students have just finished junior year. They bring us the essay they wrote in AP English class and say, I got an A on this. Can you just tell me if there's any little thing I need to fix? And we look at it and we say, wow, this is an A+ paper, and this is not an A+ college essay. And we really have to help them understand why. One of the items in our resources for today's session is an article that we wrote about that, which you can share with families. Like I said, we love English teachers. We want to respect the student's relationship with the teacher. We want to encourage the student to respect the teacher. But it's important for them to understand that they may not get the feedback, that the feedback from a teacher and from you may not match, and they need to be prepared for that. If you are a counselor and have a relationship with teachers, one of the ways you can take care of this is you can start a conversation with the teachers about audience and about common student errors that occurred, things that you see that maybe the teacher can watch for too. You want to build a relationship. You want to defer to their expertise as teachers, but you also need to help them understand that the audience is not looking for the kind of structure an English teacher might be looking for. The issues that an English teacher looks for are not the same. And furthermore, the teacher knows the student. The teacher knows a lot about the student because this is someone that they've worked with, they've had in their class. The audience for a college essay doesn't know the student, and the essay is an important piece of a package that you have a better perspective on. So if you can have those conversations respectfully and delicately, I encourage you to do it. So that takes me back to my very first question. Who owns the essay? The bottom line is the student has choices to make. You can facilitate good choices, but you can't force them. We're not doing our students any favors by forcing changes that they don't value. This is an important place to help the student really strengthen where they're coming from and who they are and help them feel like they're ready to go to college. So let go of that imperfect essay if necessary. Each essay is not a reflection on you. You'll have some that you're proud of, some that you're not proud of, some students where you'll shake your head and say, wow, I really thought he could have done better. And some that you will see that this type of review and this type of willingness to let go and say enough is enough, I'm done with this one, I don't need to stay up till 2 in the morning fixing student essays. It will actually help you get better essays down the road as you work on them, on several essays as the students finish their applications. So the down and dirty question, how long should it take? What's too much? Here are my guidelines. You should never spend more than an hour on a single essay. You should rarely spend more than 30 minutes. If you do more with the content development up front, and that's a topic for a completely different day, you will spend less time reviewing at the end. Content development doesn't all happen in essay drafts. It can happen in writing exercises. It happens in conversations. It happens in early messy drafts where we see the student going down the wrong path and we try to bring them back before they go too far and fall in love with their essays because they don't want to let go either. So how do you improve this? How do you get better at it? one is to keep track of your time. I'm not asking you to punch a clock, but pay attention. What kind of time are you spending reviewing essays? How much work are students putting into it? Pay attention to common mistakes and issues that you encounter. Maybe those are areas where students need help, but maybe you need help setting things up properly earlier so that you don't end up with those kind of mistakes. And also think about where you get stuck. What kind of essays, what kind of situations make you stop in your tracks and say, oh no, not this again. I never know what to do with this. I feel like I have a stomach ache and I can't bear it. So really pay attention to your process, and I'd really recommend doing what you can to look for patterns, look for places earlier in the process to address common issues. When we consult with professionals, we usually find two big categories of problems. So watch for these yourselves. One is they're missing out on opportunities up front. Content issues, structure issues, and those cause bigger problems later on. And second, and I alluded to this before, they're trying to do too much all at once. They're so good at the review. They're so insightful. They're so good at identifying what needs to be improved that they want to share everything with the student all at once. And they can't understand why the student can't do anything with it. So if you fall into either of those categories, I advise you to really slow down. Take your essays, take some of these essays in the off season, look at them again. Watch the trajectory of how the students' drafts developed and see where you both got stuck. I'm going to stop in just a moment and take questions. Like I said, we have many resources for you to help supplement what I've just talked about. One is a resource guide about these common challenges, with some notes about each of them. The second is guidelines for reading drafts. And then there's two articles. One is for parents. It's a sheet we like to share, how to help without taking over, and we encourage you to use it either as a resource for yourself or you're welcome to share it with your families. And the second is a blog article that my partner Kim wrote, is an A English paper, a college essay. And as you might guess, the answer is probably not. The bottom line is, as I said, you can help your students make good choices. Be that reviewer, provide a reflection, and help your students feel like they're ready to go to college, help them be confident, help them feel strong, and do your best. And you do good work, and I'm pleased to present to you today. I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Well, as you can well imagine, we have lots of good questions and some also very complimentary comments. People have just found this very, very helpful. I know I have. And so let's go ahead and spend a few minutes looking at some of the questions. If you have a question that you haven't posted in your question section, now would be a good time to do that. And if we will not get to all the questions, so I'll send them to Susan and she'll be able to spend time on them. And that also helps too for some questions that you might want, that'll give us a written version of answers for you too. So let's start with a question that I've seen a couple of times. And basically, Susan, what do you recommend when you have students and perhaps they're being pushed by parents that are applying to very, very competitive elite schools, and you know that they're not really competitive for that school and the writing is not going to be competitive for that school. So what kind of recommendations, how do you handle that? Because we all know that it does take a lot of time, and a lot of those schools have additional multiple essays that students need to do. So what's your recommendation in that case?
Oh, those situations break my heart because I think those students will excel somewhere and they're not going to necessarily get into those schools, and it's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. But I do have suggestions. I will often tell those, and we do a whole intake with our students, so we know kind of what we're getting, and we do some pre-writing, and we, as I'm sure most of you do, we have their grades and we have their scores, and we know what kind of students they are. We know what their chances are, and we know when an exceptional essay maybe could push them over into the next level, and when no matter what they write it's not going to matter, or they're really not capable of that level of sophistication in their writing. That goes to parent expectations. I will never tell a parent, I'm really sorry, ma'am, but your son is not material for Harvard. I would never have the conversation.
Right.
It's not my place.
However,
yeah,
not the counselor hat that you wear.
I will say to a parent, your child, and I will lay it out. I will show them. We do a whole plan for our students, and we'll say, you have 16 essays. These 3 overlap. These 2 are completely unique. Overall, you have 8 unique essays to write and 8 modifications, so that they understand the scope of this big project. And you want her to apply early action to all of them. So we try to give them the boundaries. And I will say, in order to do this work, we will do 3 or 4 drafts of every essay, and that's it. So you're going to have to trust my judgment and know that I am letting her go on her way onto the next draft, onto the next essay, when it is time to be done. I can't make parents not edit. I cannot force it. What I do tell parents, and I have said this to many of them and actually have had very good results, I will say, you think you are helping by fixing your student's essay. Not only are you not helping, but you're hurting, because admissions officers can tell. I can tell, and they can tell. It doesn't sound like a student. So while I will not necessarily say your child's writing is not at the level of that college, what I will do is, rather than trying to elevate the writing, I will be very realistic about what the student can achieve, and I will say, this is enough. We've gone far enough, and then we'll move on to the next essay.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. So 2 questions that are related. One is, what is the common or average number of times it'll take to review a solid essay? And then connected to that is, when you say 30 to 60 minutes per essay, do you mean overall or per draft?
Okay,
so
that's a good question.
The length of time and versus, how many times is there a recommendation or, point where, you're just spinning your wheels?
Absolutely. We say that 3 to 5 full drafts should be sufficient. Now, I may get a content draft, what I call a content draft, and I tell the student it's going to be too long, it's going to be repetitive, this is not like the paper that you write the night before and give to your English teacher because it's due and you got to be done. This is an early draft. Think like a writer. Get the stuff down on paper. That's a first draft. At that point, I'll identify areas where I need more content or different content or more reflection or more clarification, and I'll give the student very simple writing exercises, questions to answer, maybe a little paragraph to do. I'll ask for more on a certain aspect of the essay and say, I want you to just set a timer for 10 minutes and write about this and give me more. That's not a draft. That's just sort of an interim activity. When I feel like they have that, then I move them on to the structure draft, which is, okay, I want you to be really careful about where you open this essay. Here are 4 different places you might want to start. Pick one. Try it. Give it a shot. So that's really a second substantive draft. There may be another draft in between, and then we get to the polish phase, which really is that final proof, that final review. And so all of that, so that's why I say 3 to 5 drafts really should be enough, with some interim writing in between. As far as the 30 to 60 minutes, sometimes a review takes 10 minutes. Some of those early reviews, I'm looking for specific things when I look at a content draft. I'm looking, for example, for a personal statement, I'm looking for, do I know what they're trying to tell me, and do I know why they're telling me? Have you answered the questions, what happened and why does it matter? If you haven't answered those questions, and it only takes me a few minutes to identify whether those questions have been answered, I will send the student back to do some more outside writing. So 30 to 60 minutes are really when you're looking at substantive drafts that need a lot of attention. I will spend 30 to 45 minutes on an essay when it comes to me from a student I have never met, I have never worked with, and I have a lot of stuff to untangle. Now, this is all I do, so obviously I'm pretty fast when I get to it. Our guidelines are, it should take, we believe, and in our experience, it should take 3 to 4 hours of writing coach time to get through an essay from beginning to end. That includes phone conversations, emails, staying in touch with the parent. That's everything. So those are really, I mean, we do a lot of time studies for ourselves, so I'm very focused on that. But I would not, if someone's spending 60 minutes per draft on 4 drafts, that's too much.
That's very helpful to have that kind of guideline and understanding that, especially as this is just a part of the process.
Right, exactly.
So Kathy asks, if you're not sharing all your comments and feedback at once or something close to that, you're going through these, the different stages, and as you talked about, you don't want to overwhelm them at once. How do you keep the student from being frustrated that you continue to have comments? And how do you keep the process to a reasonable length? Because It's like, well, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? Well,
yes.
And I know I run into that because that's the approach that I have for my students. So what kind of thoughts do you have, and what experience do you have with that?
We find that a lot of problems take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. So let's say the student is very repetitive, for example, early on. Mm-hmm. If I say to the student, this draft is 750 words and I need it to be under 650. If I say to the student, I need my next draft to be closer to the word count, generally she takes care of the repetition because she's making choices about what to get rid of. If I find that my student is a poor speller, I may say early on, keep an eye on your spelling. I think this might be an issue for you. I will find out if, one, she was just being careless and didn't read it before she sent it to me, or two, she really has a spelling problem, but I won't correct it. So I may comment on a few more technical issues, the things that would commonly be called, polish things. What I will focus on early on, and no student would be able to come back and say, why didn't you say that? And this is where I think it's really important to differentiate between the content and the rest of the process. The kinds of things that students might say, why didn't you tell me that, are things like, your story isn't believable, or you've written this in dialogue and I cannot imagine that you remember every part of this conversation, or your language is you're trying so hard to impress me that your diction is distracting. So I have to say that in my experience, while I understand the concern that a student would say, why are we going back and forth so much, our back and forth tends to be very small bits. I need you to do this because I want them to understand that one little thing. And I need you to get it back to me by tomorrow, and I'll tell the student, I want you to spend 15 minutes on it. Do 15 minutes tonight, and they'll say, oh, wait, no, I have volleyball till 5, and then we're going out to dinner, and then I have homework. I don't have 15 minutes. I'll say, do 15 minutes tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow I have 15 minutes. And I'll say, okay, by 7 o'clock tomorrow, I want you to do this one small thing. That they appreciate because I'm helping them manage their time and I'm helping them manage the edits. It's not telling them I want you to work on this one small thing and I want you to revise the whole thing again. So there's different levels. If the person who had that question, if that's something they want to talk more about, there's a lot more to it and sort of what order to give comments in than I think I can get into now.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. And as I said, we do have many more questions that we're not going to have time. So but we do have one question, and I want
Okay.
you to go ahead and show where the resources are located. We've
Yes.
posted
Okay.
this to some of you have asked, but this way you can see, and then it's
Great.
also going to be listed on the Guided Path website. So.
Okay.
So explain what you've got here,
Okay,
Susan.
so this is our website. As you see here, the URL is wellwritingworkshop.com/guided path. Easy to remember. Right here are the 4 items that I mentioned: common challenges, reading drafts, the 2 articles, How to Help Without Taking Over, and Is an A English Paper College Essay. This is what I said at the beginning, that this webinar was originally developed as part of a larger webinar series. If you're curious about it, click here. You can learn more. We also have free resources. I'm sure many of you are familiar with us. Many of you may not be. We have free resources for students, parents, consultants, counselors, all kinds of different groups. We have an ebook called Write Your Way into College. It's free. We have interviews with admissions officers. We usually do those at NACAC. The sound quality is not fabulous, but the interviews are great. We have other free webinars. We have a newsletter that comes out. Here are some of our past posts. And you can always send us an email, contact us, look at our resources. If you're from a school, share this link with your students so they can get free information. And we're available. We like to say that, of course we work with students. That's a big part of our business. But we know a lot, and we like to share it with others who work with students. So please stay in touch and let us know what else you need and how we can help you.
Thank you. And the slides are available on SlideShare to download. They're also posted as a PDF on this webinar as a handout, but you'll be able to go to the blog on guidedpath.net and see the slides, view the recording. It's been recorded so that those of you that want to listen to this again, or we have many people who are not able to join us today, that they'll be able to access that as well. So Susan, thank you very much. This has been such a great topic. We've gotten lots of comments that this is one of the best ones we've ever offered. So all thanks to you. Everybody have a great time. Check your email. If you're not a member of our email, and I had to send out personal emails to a number of you last night because you're not on our mailing list, please go to guidedpath.net and join our mailing list so that you can get informed of upcoming webinars and other resources that we make available. So everybody have a great day. This does conclude our webinar on Enough is Enough, Letting Go of the Imperfect Essay.